probably because one of my sales team or myself at some point or the others called you up and said, buy our data, and then you said, yeah, okay. Others, well, we'll welcome you. Anyway, just to give you a bit of a backdrop of us, who we are, we gather data. We're a data business. So we've been around for 10 years, and in the first instance, what we do is we pull together comprehensive company lists, and we profile their career centres directly for every job they publish, and from that we catalogue the jobs, we segment them, we differentiate them, and then we stream them to whoever wants it. So if somebody just wants to know about R&D roles, we'll send them R&D roles. If somebody just wants to know about CRO activity in Central Eastern Europe, that's what we'll send them. It's designed so that it's filtered data which is structured to enable people to have a precise market intelligence. So we've been going in the pharma sector. Actually, the pharma area was one of the first areas we rolled out into, and clinical professionals up there on the list, we launched with them, I think, in 2007. Wow, I know, I didn't have grey hair then.
Neither did we, I wonder if there's a connection.
So what happened last year is that we launched a sub-brand within the business, which is called Recruitment Industry Insights. Well, what we sought to do was to compile all the data that we take and to start publishing content. So we actually, in life sciences, we launched it with that. We also have a report series that we do in partnership with APSCo directly, which looks at different regions one by one. We also have a report series for the legal sector. We also have one for insurance. We also have one for banking. And in each case, we're working with leading players. So the idea being that it's a combination of taking hard data and then working with the recruitment partners to make sure the data's right, make sure that the messaging is right, so that everything's spot on to get the qualitative insight as well. So with that in mind, what I really wanted to do today is I've been, as part of this, talking to lots of people across various spectrums, not just in life sciences, just to try and get a sense of, well, we all know what happened in June, and I'm trying my best to stay apolitical on this point. So, to give you some background on me, my mother's an immigrant, and well, I live in Poland most of the time. So our back office is there, our operations are there, I go back and forth, my wife is Polish, so I'm a poster child for the EU, but don't hold that against me for my sins. That's where I'm starting from. But in my defence, what happened is Yvette and I had a discussion where she said, with all the things that are going on with the EU, what does this mean? And so I thought, well, what we could potentially do is try and analyse the hotspots of hiring activity that are happening currently in the pharmaceuticals industry across Europe to see what's happening right now. Where are the emerging markets within Europe? Because realistically, there are reasons to look at the EU to expand into. Actually, what's really interesting is that when you look at the UK economy, one of the things that the UK is best at is services. Now, traditionally, people have seen that in terms of law or accounting or, energy consulting, real estate services, but actually recruitment. The UK is a global leader. You look at the flagship businesses of Michael Page, Hayes. I mean, they're expanding worldwide at the rate of knots, and that's because recruiters in the UK are the best. So that being the case, I see this. If you're looking at what's going on in Europe, and I say this in the nicest possible way because I speak to lots of recruiters in Europe because we sell to them too, they're not as good as you guys. So I think we can take some of their market share in a really, really cost-efficient way. So what I'm here to do is to help you analyse where are the pinpoint market entry points in the EU so you can go in, identify the areas where companies are really going to need your help. So the first comment is, why expand into the EU? We've seen the pound go down 10-15%. I mean, it's going back and forth a little bit at the moment. If you're looking at the midterm forecast, and this isn't me, by the way, this is bankers who talk to me telling me this, they're saying that midterm the pound will go down further, and that's mainly because of the balance of payments deficit that we're running, and also all the budget shortfalls. So at the moment, I think we're expecting the pound to go down further against the euro to about 1.1. So what that means straight away is that if you're starting to earn more in euros, and you're based from here, you're actually being more profitable as a business for doing exactly the same work. So that's working hard, working smart. So I would say, let's have a look at that. I think that we can have political chat later. I don't want to go too into who's going to do what, but as soon as the EMA moves, there are going to be certain businesses that move out of the UK. The Japanese gave their famous G20 letter, and Takeda were one of the ones that were referenced there. There is the facts are that the EMA was there in order to run regulatory. You guys are the experts here, we'll defer to you, but certain companies which are globally HQ outside the EU were in London to make sure they could be next door. And when the EMA moves, certain businesses will move. The other thing as well, when you're looking at what the single market means, the biggest reason why the single market is so powerful is because the customs union, and people sometimes forget that, what that means. But if you ask any procurement recruiter right now what the UK leaving the EU means, they're looking at you with a slightly scratched head, because the minute the UK is no longer part of the customs union, you're talking about the whole supply chain having the UK being cut out. So businesses which are reliant on integrated European supply chains will just move out the UK part. It will just happen. Now, the truth is that I think of multinationals a bit like oil tankers. They move really, really slowly. They don't really make a decision for a really long time, but eventually it happens, and then they move. So let's understand that. Let's get ahead of the curve. We're small businesses. We're nimble. We can be agile. We can start making money straight away. So when these changes start happening, it's not going to affect us. The other side, obviously, is that EU grants, which were going to go to the UK in the form of biotech. There's the Horizon 2020 project. I don't know how much you guys know about this, but the EU has a huge, huge program called Horizon 2020. And the idea is that anybody that's got a good idea, they'll just give you grants, massive amounts of grants. So there's hundreds and hundreds of millions whereby the UK is no longer eligible for funding, and they've already been cut off. So university grants in the UK, R&D, you guys know about this. The university's already been cut from funding. That money's going to be going elsewhere. Yes?
Can I just say around that the government have already committed to underwrite that funding?
I accept that, but my point is a different one. The money is going to move somewhere else. Because the budget, but I'm talking about growth.
Yeah.
Within the EU, what you're going to see happen straight away is that where that money is already sitting there in the budget, and it's not going to be allocated to the UK, it's just going to be put somewhere else.
I agree with you, but we were 21st out of 27 countries in receipt of funding from the...
My point's just following the money. So where money is going to be was one place, going to another, that will be a new growth spot. The other thing is, I read some analysis, I've had to get it verified, but about 25% of people in the life sciences industry in the UK are non-UK nationals. And I'm going to say I have a very, very diverse network of people here in the UK because of my background, and there are quite a lot of people thinking about leaving the UK right now. So I think that there's if I'm being really cynical about making money, there's a one-off opportunity to move people out of the UK. That's maybe they're horrible, but that's what I think, especially amongst the French. Can't be honest. I have French family. My backstory is my mother came to the UK from Venezuela. Her brother moved to Paris. My uncle married a Frenchwoman. I've got French cousins, the whole works. And I can tell you now, there is a whole move in France right now to pull out. You're already seeing it in South Kensington property, but that's a different story.
We had a, sorry,
yeah.
We did some analysis of the last 5 years of our placements.
Yes.
And we've been pro-pan-European for 15 years. Only 7% of our placements were, 93% of our placements were nationality into their natural country.
Really?
So French into France.
Yeah.
Only 7% was UK.
Well, why do you think?
And so, in fact, that 7%, I can't remember the number, but it was a lot of that was UK to Switzerland.
Yeah.
So it wasn't related anymore.
Why do you think there are so many non-UK in the UK then? What's your thoughts there?
Great country to live in.
Yeah.
It's fair, but it hasn't affected our business model.
Okay.
And I'm sure that Brexit will in some way, but...
Yeah, I mean, my view is that there's going to be certain changes that happen. Now, certain people will disagree with me. And I'm not saying that every single thing here I'm going to be 100% right on. Some of this is opinion piece, accepted. I think that money flows will change, and government directives will mean that decisions get made in different ways, which mean that people, as a result of that, literally reallocate investment and reorganise the way that companies work. Now, so the question is, where are they going to go? So that as recruiters we can get ahead of the curve, so we can be building bridges, getting the desks lined up and making money off the back of it. Now, I'm not saying every single head, right? But most of them will be. The other thing which is interesting is that well, as Brits, if you're looking at, going back to your point, how do we get out of this and how do we improve the situation that we're in? Well, actually, balance of payments is probably our number one issue. So if we can get BOP sorted, that'd be very good, and that would actually put the whole economy in a much better place. So actually going out and actually trading our way out through providing services into other countries where Europe's on our doorstep, where the European recruiters, frankly, compared to the Brits, are just not as good. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've been to Munich, actually APSCo are in Munich as well. And I think in Munich, there are 2 recruiters there who are worth talking about. And this is Munich, and this is like Aristo's one, they're one of our clients. And then there's Real Staffing there as well, and they're also one of our clients. And there's actually no one else there. And you're talking about probably the biggest pharmaceuticals manufacturing hub in Central Europe. You know, you talk about what's going on in Switzerland, same kind of thing. I mean, there's only like 4 or 5 recruiters there, and what have you got going on there? It's massive. Anyway, I digress. I can get tangential, so I'll try and move on. Anyway, so going on to this. So what I thought I'd do for the purpose of, to give you guys some focus, is I broke up hotspots by 5 core areas, from R&D, biotechnology, clinical, CROs, what's going on in med, what's going on QA, and what's going on regulatory. So just trying to identify what we're seeing and what the key points are. So obviously we all know that the UK has been at the centre of a new golden triangle between, and starting to actually compete with San Francisco and Boston, between Cambridge, Oxford and London. And obviously we all know how good that's been going. That's actually been one of the biggest strengths of the UK economy over the last 5 years, is the direct venture capital going into the UK. Actually, what's really interesting is where else that's happening. So, Belgium. There's an interesting one. So Belgium actually quite small comparative to anywhere else, but it's actually the fastest growing. And a lot of that is to do with direct government attitude. The Belgian government have taken the approach that they really want to create a biotech hub there. So you've seen a huge regulatory deregulation to enable it, direct investment in the form of government programs, you name it. It's all online, look it up, but it's there. And as a result of that, my money's saying the EMA goes there. I mean, I could be wrong, but if I had to put money on it, that's what I call.
The hub money is on Sweden.
I'll just see what happens. I mean, I'm just looking at... Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's, but, you know, we go from there, and, you know, otherwise, I think the other one to look at, obviously, is Germany. So if you guys aren't in Germany, and you're thinking about it, this is a good market for R&D. And that's maybe stating the obvious slightly, but it is a good market. The danger is that it's actually contracting. And so the danger with all of these things, it's not just about the size of the market, it's also about the direction the market's going in. So I don't know how many of you guys do you know, work through the trend analysis internally, but I'll reflect on that. What's interesting also though, on the biotech side, and that's where Berlin comes into play. So Berlin are now trying to create this whole virtuous thing around the new investment hub in Berlin. And they're trying to really raise their profile amongst VCs, where to say, well, we should be back in here, back in here, back in here. I was in Berlin recently. I know people are setting up tech companies there. It's actually very interesting. I mean, compare it to what I see happening in Shoreditch, it is. Amongst the pharma excluding, I think, obviously, if you're looking at the money side, Switzerland's a great market, we all know that. The big challenge is how you get around the local regulations on basing yourself there. The Swiss have recently put in place some, well, enforcing probably is correct. They've started enforcing heavy regulations on how recruitment firms can operate in the local market. And so if you fall foul of that, then it is quite tough. So the only way really to do it is to actually get yourself on the ground, which means you have to find someone there who will act with you directly as opposed to indirectly, which is what they're trying to cut down on. Clinical, CROs. Well, okay, I mentioned before I'm based in Poland. I tell you, I'm seeing it in Warsaw. I'm seeing it in Poland. It is growing, the pharma industry there. I mean, I'll give you an interesting stat. This is a random one. But it's 73% of all people like 21 coming out of university in Poland, which means they're basically that 3/4 of their people are coming out of university with degrees, where the majority of those are STEM. And so as a result of that, it's just becoming a mecca. You've got all the major CROs looking at there, a load of the major pharma companies there. Novartis has got a major operation there. Quite a few of the others do, and they're just part of what's happening, which is quite interesting. And depending on who you talk to, they'll give you different versions of this. But what seems to be happening is there seems to be becoming a disconnect between how the CROs operate and how the clinic and how the pharmaceuticals companies operate. Whereby, for whatever reason, the CROs don't seem to be delivering what the companies want. Now, I'm not the closest one to it, so I don't know. But what I am seeing happening is that jobs and volumes that I'd be expecting to see within the pharmaceuticals companies just outsourcing to the CROs are coming backwards. And as a result of that, as a secondary thing, what you're then seeing is you're seeing the clinical roles going to Eastern Europe being set up within the Pharmaceuticals. Poland is one. I mean, amongst Eastern Europe, we're probably seeing Czech Republic is also one which is worth referencing. Hungary, it's the V4 which you want to look at, which are worth talking about. Otherwise, I would see the other one for the fastest growing is, what's it called? Once again, Belgium is also working at and Germany as well. I would say it's also one to be careful of, because what seems to be happening in terms of what we're seeing with Germany is that there doesn't seem to be as much activity as we would have thought and we would have expected. So everyone knows that the German market is, huge pharmaceuticals market, fine, but it's going backwards where other places are stepping up. So I would just say, if you're looking at what you're focusing on, don't always just jump into Germany. It's a really, really lucrative, seductive idea. Yeah, great, it's got critical mass, it's got volume, it's got size, but it's not going forward, it's going backwards. Let's see. Med Affairs. As you'll see, there's no major surges, but it's, I call them the Club Med countries, France, Italy, Spain, Italy. There's a general rise. Also, Medcoms is down significantly. That's also interesting. Once again, I'm not the person who will tell you why all this is happening, because that's not who I am. I'm not these guys who are sitting behind the scenes talking to all the pharmaceuticals companies, talking to government, understanding the detail behind it. I'm just seeing the data. So what I see is this, and it's up for you guys to then take it, and we will share with you our methodologies, and then we can talk about what it means and why it means what it does. This one is probably, I would say, because of the EMA. So that's probably what's at stake. Where does that go? I mean, obviously the UK will continue to have a regulatory function. I'm not disputing that. Of course it will. But will it be the same volume of people being hired for that? I don't think so. So, that's going to move. Maybe it is sweet. I don't know. Then suddenly that's number one on the list, maybe.
But if the UK was high in 2015, that was the year before the vote.
Well, this is proportionately done percentages, just to explain. Sorry, I haven't labelled it all properly. So I took this data right up until the end of June, because I was trying to avoid too much, because it's really difficult once you start getting into post-referendum stuff, because you get political events that distort all your data. And all I was really trying to do is say, let's take some clean data without political interference, and let's just try and analyse what it means, what the trends are, what the hotspots are, and then see where the actual investment and resources are going to go. So, okay, sorry, it might have taken a bit of July. But this just to give you an idea. So, that's basically what we're seeing. The EU, excluding the UK, will grow in this area. So I would say this would be my number one hot tip. Wherever the EMA goes, that's where I would be. And I'll be narrowing that down. Anyway, that's final QA. I think it's all this one. So with QA, I think Germany manufacturing is on the increase. So I think a lot of this will depend then, once again, you guys know about this, about where drugs are on the cycle. Once they get post-approval, then obviously manufacturing increases and everything else. So I think that it's worth looking at what's happening there. But this is the point. I do think that will change. So a lot of it will come down to what the agreements come out of the next few years. Obviously, I agree with you. There are massive advantages with the UK not being tied into customs union. There's no point leaving the EU and staying in the customs union. It makes no sense. But that does mean that at the same time that there are going to be jobs which will no longer be in the UK. Where they go, I don't know. Before we can see. I think Ireland's going to be a big winner as well, especially in this one. Ireland's been investing heavily in its function here on the manufacturing side, and they'll get massive benefits off that. So that's my tip for what it's worth in terms of what we're seeing. So anyway, thank you very much. That was my whiz through. Very happy to answer any questions. I will avoid answering any questions on why, because I will defer to experts on that. But if you want to ask any questions about how our data is collected, what the basis of that, I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you.